start to happen now. We want to, our illustrious leaders, Tim's down there doing an interview for Discovery Channel. Then Oprah Winfrey's going to be here with her crew.
Leave her on the island.
So I've been asked to introduce the first speaker of the day. And the first speaker we have today, it's my pleasure to announce, will be Dr. Mike Reynolds, who has for the last 34 years been involved in astronomy and educational science. He's also for 30 of those years been a friend of mine, which shows he has absolutely no class at all and an entirety of friends. Mike has been a director emeritus of the Chabot Observatory out in California. He is currently, what dean are you now?
Dean of Mathematics and Natural Sciences.
He's the Dean of Mathematics and Natural Sciences for Jacksonville College. And he was a backup for Krista McCullough in the Future Space Program. He's been well-traveled. Well, I'm sure he's going to tell you something about some of his exploits into the Arctic. Antarctic. So this should be a very exciting and interesting talk. It's a little bit different than he normally gives. It's supposed to be a good one this time. Without further ado, I'd like to present my friend, my son, Dr. Mike Reynolds.
Well, Tippy and Don and I were just sitting here talking that we've done so many talks, the three of us together at different events, we could each give each other's talks. So what I've done is I've kind of taken all three of them and put them into one. Actually, this was inspired by Tippy and then inspired by Don, because I thought instead of my normal ranting about eclipses or meteorites or testing telescopes for Astronomy magazine or one of those things, I just put it all in one and just talk about it all. So I kind of call this, are you sure this is an astrology? Because everybody knows this answer, because all of us have had this happen. How many times have we had someone come up to us and say, are you an astrologer? You know that. In teaching my astronomy classes at the college, and it's weird, as a dean, I still have this philosophy you need to teach. And so I teach one class every semester. I wait until after the drop date to tell them it's not astrology. So they can't drop, they're stuck with me. Then I tell them it's not astrology. And so anyway, I want to kind of just step through some stuff that many of you have had opportunities to do over the years and tell some kind of funny stories, as well as talk about some opportunities for you as amateurs. I'm a very weird astronomer, no comments there, but having a PhD in astronomy usually means you don't know how to look through a telescope, you don't know how to find anything in the sky with a telescope, and constellations, what are those? Well, I'm one of these weird guys who kind of grew up as an amateur astronomer, and I've never really gotten far from that. I really enjoy sharing astronomy with people, and it's always been a fun thing for me. And when it came to my interest in imaging, I was part of that era where you were required to do science projects. In the 1960s and 70s, this was a big, big thing because the Russians were going to stomp our butts and things like that. And so in 8th grade, I was required to do a project. I had you'll love this, had earned a 3-inch skill reflector by selling Christmas cards, and decided I wanted to make a study of the moon and do some crude. It was very crude photography. So I did this project. It was okay for an 8th grader. Took it to school, teachers went on strike, and the project was stolen. That was my first experience, so it became a crime scene. That's a good start, isn't it? So the next year I decided, as a 9th grader, I was going to build my own reflector, and I actually bought, one of the Edmund Sam Brown books, all about telescopes, and ground and polished and even silvered my own mirrors as a 9th grader. Yeah, I had silver nitrate all over my nose. It was quite attractive. And built everything else and photographed the moons of Jupiter. And it was a nice project. I did fairly well with it, but then I really got serious about the photography part of it. And you learn early how you do these fancy names. Instead of just calling it cooled emulsion photography, This was the title of my project. The reciprocity failure and color balance of ectochrome film is demonstrated by latent images formed at 20 degrees Celsius and negative 63 degrees Celsius. And there's a real story behind this. At the regional science fair, and Florida was really big into science fairs, the regional science fair, I won second place to some guy who did effects of pollution on Spanish moss, and he had this big old title. I had cool motion photography. My teacher said, look at your title. Look at his. I changed my title to that, went to the state fair, won first place. So enough said there. So I really got into the cool emulsion part, built my own cameras. Again, you're talking about someone 16, 17, 18 years old. Got into some of the various research done by Arthur Hoak, and I included Paul Knappenberger on here. You talk about people who influence your lives. I had a chance to go to Fernbank in Atlanta. I was in Jacksonville, Fernbank in Atlanta, and spend time with Paul and the work they were doing at Fernbank on cool emulsion photography and designing and building my own camera. But then I started working on my doctorate a few years later and got into gas hypersensitization. Alex Smith, who was on my committee at the University of Florida, made me, it was the greatest experience, build my own equipment again. So I learned how to cast aluminum, machine aluminum, and Don Parker remembers this, because Don and I were working together on an experiment to see if hypered film would allow us to get better resolution for planetary photography. Now, in those days, all the wimps would use forming gas. Not us, real men. Real men and women use hydrogen gas and you bake it in your oven. So, my wife Debbie, Don's wife Mo is probably thinking, you guys are absolutely crazy. What could go wrong? Nothing could go wrong, but we got some interesting results. And of course, since I got my PhD, obviously astronomical imaging has changed significantly, and I've not kept up like the rest of you have. This is, by the way, an all sky I took out at Yosemite when I was out in the San Francisco Bay Area and went over to Yosemite one weekend. Took this 30-minute tracked all sky photo of the Milky Way. But I've not kept up with the rest of you. So seriously, you guys have done some tremendous photography. I just threw some of these in here just for giggles, because as a writer for astronomy, I get to review. In fact, I'm reviewing a new Italian Apo astronomical photographic telescope right now, just seeing how well it works, and it's so far made a nice rain gauge. Meteors, meteorites, and craters. I spent a lot of research traveling the world in this particular area, and it's been a lot of fun. My first meteor shower, this is embarrassing, was the 66 Leonids. And if you know anything about the 66 Leonids, that was a storm. That was like 12 years old. I heard there was going to be this meteor shower. I got out in my backyard, and I had rates of a measly 10,000 an hour. I thought, oh, they're all like this. Yeah, right. Well, this is the 2001 Leonids from Northern California. This is about a 2-minute exposure. It's 50 meteors in one plane in this particular image. And so, meteor showers have always been something that has interested me because of my work, both, as a kid and then as I worked on my PhD. Meteorites have always been one of those things people have said, well, how do you know if it's a meteorite or not? Well, I go to Madame Ruby. I don't know about you, but I go to Madame Ruby. And this is actually a very funny story. This is obviously a palm reader. And so I pulled up, and some of you have heard this. This is too good not to tell again. I pulled up to take a picture of this sign and said, this is perfect for my talks. Madame Ruby, how do you tell if it's a meteorite? You go to Madame Ruby. So I pulled up, I'm taking pictures of her sign, and out comes Madame Ruby in the flesh. And she walks over to me, and she says, sir, what are you doing? I'm thinking, well, you're Madame Ruby. You tell me what I'm doing. Why are you asking me this question? Right. And I told her how beautiful her sign was. I was going to make it famous around the world. One of the interesting things about being into meteorites are the names of meteorites. And I put this in here just for Tippy, because I'm sure in Tippy's collection, you've got to have a big rock donga, don't you, Tippy? But look at the names of meteorites. And by the way, meteorites are named for the post office box they're closest to. A lot of these are like Cocklebiddy and Camel Donga are meteorite falls in Australia. Vaca Muerta, dead cow or cow killer, is a South American meteorite, but just great names for meteorites. You've got to have some of these in in your research collection if you're going to do this sort of thing. Lots of meteoroms I do see. You get meteorite, meteorom. And I literally, because I've written a book on this, I get an average of 2 or 3 samples a month. And I have not yet got a meteorite. They've all been meteoroms. My funniest story is this thing right here. I got a phone call from a fella who swore that, I saw this thing fall. Yeah, right, this is too good to be true. So I said, okay, I'll go check it out just for the heck of it. And drove to his property. There's like a split tree, the whole thing. And on the ground, seeing this chunk of, well, it looks kind of like a petrified cow patty. And there are red ants crawling all in and out of it. So it's got aliens. And I told him, I said, this is not a meteorite. And I brought meteorite samples. Being an educator, here's what a meteorite really looks like, and see the texture and smell your meteorite and things like that. Look at the ants coming out of it. He got furious. He threatened to. I didn't understand him at first. He said, "I'm gonna beat your arse." I'm thinking, what's an arse? Oh, and I understand what this is. And he actually called a lawyer because I did not proclaim his stuff as a meteorite. So all sorts of interesting folks out there when it comes to this sort of thing. And I think shows, which I really love, like Meteorite Hunter, has really helped to do 2 things. It's helped to get more interest in meteorites, but it's also brought out the loons. And they're out there, and they've all got, lottery-winning rocks. And yes, every once in a while I do get something that it's pretty interesting. Like the one in the middle, a soldier from Iraq sent me. And this is actually a fulgurite. He found it when he was over there in the Iraqi war. And what happens is lightning hits the soil and fuses it, and that's what he found. It's not a meteorite, but it's actually something pretty cool. So you do see some really neat stuff from time to time. But here's the neatest. Now you guys are reading the wrong stuff. You read Sky and Telescope, Astronomy, all these other magazines. You need to read Weekly World News. And this has been classified as a Popenite, by the way. And I don't know they had to pick on the poor Pope, but notice another meteor. Oh my God. Another meteor fells Pope, and it looks like a piece of lava rock. It's the worst example of a meteorite that one could even proclaim. But for some reason or other, oh, by the way, new car runs on beer. Oh, dude, that's pretty cool. So you guys are reading the wrong astronomy publications. You need to be reading, unfortunately, they're gone, but things like Weekly World News. One of the neatest expeditions I got a chance to take was going to Antarctica. And 6 years ago, I led an expedition down to recover meteorites. And you don't check into the Holiday Inn. You think camping's rough here. This is during the summer, and the highs are like 30 below zero. It's the high temperature. And there's my tent, and there's the window view out my beautiful room. And by the way, the temperature inside the tent was around 38 degrees. It actually stayed fairly warm. This is all Arctic gear that you would use to obviously try to survive. And it's not just a little vacation trip. You have to really be careful. Winds would gust to 90 miles an hour. You'd have these adiabatic winds that would come over the mountains or the nunataks, and you had to be very, very careful in this sort of condition. Remember, you're talking about the Antarctic summer. The sun is up 24 hours a day, and 3 a.m. you get up and decide you're going to go to the little girls' or little boys' room, which is another adventure, by the way. If you trip and fall and break something and can't get back to your tent, you're going to die. So you have to really think through these sorts of things, because every step is can be dangerous. Speaking of when you got to go, remember we're in the wilderness. There's not like a even a porta potty. It was very special. We built our own ice toilet, and basically what we did is we dug out, as you can see, some blocks of snow ice, and put us a 33-gallon fuel drum, but you have to carry your own fuel with you, lined it. We brought along a little toilet seat, and there's the toilet paper, so you have at least some privacy. But I will tell you, You don't hang around here very long reading newspaper. You do your thing and you're gone, and it does give a whole new definition to blue moon. Now having said that, one of the privileges of going to Antarctica is, you're going to a place that very few people have been. We're talking about when you get into the interior of the continent, and you have very strict rules and regulations what you can take in and what you can take out. Basically, when you leave, you've got to take everything with you. Everything. Everything, you understand? And so, flying over, we were bringing aviation fuel to fly our little plane around, and flying back out, the fuel barrels were containing everything. Yeah, right. That's a good way to put it, Don. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, if this plane crashes, it's going to read on my tombstone, Reynolds was killed by a 33-gallon barrel of crap. I mean, I kept on thinking, just don't melt till we get back to Chile. Just stay frozen. Truly at the South Pole. I mean, it's kind of interesting. This is the South Pole. Now you look at me and say, come on now, Reynolds. You're at the South Pole. What would you do at the South Pole? I've done something none of you have done. I've run around the Earth several times, right? Around the pole. And I know I'm looking very studly there. Look at the American flag, how it's really whipping. As soon as this picture was taken, my gloves, my face mask, my hoodie, my wrap, everything went back on. It was really very, very cold. Humidity is none. It's the driest place on the Earth, but it's still, again, extreme conditions. But the reason we were there was to go looking for meteorites. And understand that meteorites are recovered in Antarctica do not stay with the discoverer. I mean, this is truly a research expedition. What you do is you bag them up, you double bag them, they go back to the Johnson Space Center into the NASA moon rock curation, and they're sent out to other researchers like myself for further study. So a variety of meteorites, one would wander across. Sometimes they'd actually be buried in the ice itself. This is glacier ice. And what had happened, they would have been buried maybe, a million years ago, and they would kind of conveyor belt along, eventually would pop up as the ice got close to an unattack or a mountain. So you can see, by the way, the foot gear, you're walking across ice, and it's quite an adventure, as you can imagine. A variety of different rocks. Meteorites. See, the thing about finding meteorites in Antarctica is you got to understand that there's ice, and then there's a rock. Well, where does that rock come from? Well, the rock basically is usually meteoritic. This happens to be what's known as a SNCC, a Martian meteorite. It's a sugartite. The front end of the meteorite shows that nice little fusion crust, and is from Mars. And so when you find something like this, besides wanting to drool upon it, you basically GPS it and bag it, and you never touch it. And then it goes back again to the Johnson Space Center for further analysis. Fantastic opportunity. Like I say, it gets to give you a feel for a little more bundled up. They call that my Goldfinger look, the James Bond, you're going to die type of look. But, when he had the goggles on, it's going to cut him in half with laser. But nonetheless, it was just bitterly, bitterly cold. And it's amazing. It gives you a whole new perspective. Some of my other research has actually led me to places like the Smithsonian, where they have probably one of the best research collections of meteorites in the world. This, of course, is the very famous ALH 84001. This is the SNCC, the Martian meteorite, where they thought they had found fossilized life. And of course, that debate goes on. It probably isn't. But in my studies, if I get it to work, there it is. This is a thin section photomicrograph I took of one of the suspect areas. And you look at these nodules, and they reminded biologists, astrobiologists in particular, of what possibly fossilized bacterium could look like. This is not very, very high magnification. The problem, these are too large. And to make this is very simple, by the way. All you do you take a small sample of the meteorite, put it on a piece of glass, like a glass slide, and you continue to grind it down till it's literally paper thin, and you can see through it. And so you can see the detail I get when I did my photography. It's kind of a nice image. Unfortunately, not live, but that's what it would have looked like. But see, again, you're reading the wrong stuff. You're reading Sky and Telescope and astronomy and science and things like that. You've got to be reading Weekly World News, as here it is. NASA rover discovers Eskimo tribe on Mars. Low carb miracle. They live to 140. It's 140 Martian years, so they'll only be about 70 Earth years. So, so 140 on all blubber, well, I guess I'm in good shape, all blubber diet. Isn't that cute? The little rovers back there in the background. And they got nice little sunshades on. You guys are reading the wrong stuff. I tell you, this is the best education. When this publication was still out, I would occasionally wander into a store like Walmart that would carry this. And when I bought, I think it was this one, or it may have been the Pope, I took it to the counter, and the lady said to me, "Do you read this stuff?" I said, "Well, I'm an astronomy professor, and I use it for my class." She said, "Sure you do." All right, speaking of meteorites, let me escape here. You already see a little bit of a preview of this. This is a terrific ad. I don't know how many of you have seen this. This is just fantastic. So we'll play this.
Yes, let's go. We're rolling. Step out on the radar. Oh my God. That was close.
I got to play it again. It's just a great ad. It's just.
Yes, let's go. We're rolling. Step out on the radar. Oh my God. That was close.
Terrific ad. All right, so back to the other stuff here. Part of my work, speaking of cratering, has been to travel the Earth and research meteorite craters and the types of impact evidence we find. For example, Odessa. My first trip to Odessa was actually with my son Jeremy, who's in the back, and he and I went, I guess like about 1985, 86 when I was working on my PhD. And in those days, there was one old fellow who kind of was a caretaker of the crater, but it was an opportunity to survey and look at various impact materials. Obviously, and a number of you have been here, the Canyon Diablo, Behringer crater off of Interstate 40 in Arizona. Just a magnificent, well-preserved crater where Gene Shoemaker, who was one of my mentors, did a lot of work. Astronauts trained there. This is just a classic crater. And I remember actually Jeremy was with me again. One of the very first times I went there to do research in this crater, I had, various equipment you would take along to do your research. I had this uber magnet. And Jeremy and another fellow and I were walking along, and I said, "I wonder where the meteorites are." And I put my camera bag down. I swear to you, Jeremy, I'll verify. They just went ring and jumped out of the ground on the side of my camera bag. So I guess we found it. And that's the only place we found meteorites in the entire crater. Right around the circumference of the crater itself. It just happened to hit it by chance. One crater I've done some work in, been there twice, is the Slang crater in South Africa. This was suspected to be a volcanic crater. And about 10 years ago, a number of us did research and recovered things like shocked quartz to show that this indeed was a real crater. Again, Jeremy was there with me with one of those expeditions, and he had this uber magnet, tossed it over the side, and recovered what we think is the only fragment of a meteorite ever found at Slang crater in South Africa. So, fun stuff. Sometimes you run some crazies. This is my favorite graduation card. You got the dinosaurs standing around, big dinosaurs, and normal, typical stuff. And remember, graduation is not an ending but a beginning. Here comes the big Chicxulub 6-mile diameter asteroid about to crush the little dinosaurs. So, yeah, this is even better though. You got the big military dinosaur. The real reason for the geochemical, anomalies of the KT boundary. Fellow dinosaurs, let me present to you the most technologically advanced and powerful weapon ever devised by our kind, the iridium bomb. See, the idea is by that big impactor, the element iridium was distributed around the world in a very thin layer. And so, if you don't get it, I'll explain it to you later. But I hope you're prepared for more of this because you got Tippy and Don this afternoon too. I've had a chance to do some really fun projects in the last couple of years. One is the Dawn spacecraft flyby of Vesta that's coming up later this year. And I've been working with the Space Science Institute, in particular, a new exhibit they have coming out called Great Balls of Fire. It'll open this summer in Richmond, Virginia, and we'll travel around the country from there. But it was kind of funny because they sent little old me along with some of these really big names in planetary sciences, the graphic, and said, what do you guys think about this graphic? And this is the graphic they're going to be using for the Dawn Vesta flyby. So that was been a fun project. Another really, really fun project, because of my interest in outreach, is a project that the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, through their Night Sky Network, just put out. Some of you are very familiar with this, called Space Rocks, and worked with them for quite a bit of time in designing this newest Night Sky Network project. And what it does, it allows astronomy clubs to talk about meteorites, meteorons, what's different, what's similar, to kind of educate people. There's a lot of interest in this, especially, again, because of meteorite hunters. And so Jeff Nofkin and Steve Arnold, two really nice guys, by the way, who worked very, very hard and very long trying to recover meteorites. So this has been a good parallel. There's been a lot of interest in that. It's been a very fun project to do it. Eclipsing it. One of my interests in astronomy, it carried through from being an amateur to being a professional, has been total solar eclipse astronomy. And knock on wood, I've been to 17 total solar eclipses, and knock on wood, I've seen 17 of the 17, which is a pretty good average. In fact, Jeremy again, maybe Jeremy, you must be the lucky charm. Jeremy and I were at the 2002 eclipse in South Africa, and it was beautiful in the morning, and all of a sudden this thick layer of clouds came in. And I thought, well, I've been very fortunate up to now, and sometimes you just have to miss it. So Jeremy and myself and two others are staying side by side, and there were people like 10 feet behind us. And so 15 to 20 seconds before third contact into the eclipse, there's a break in the clouds and we see the eclipse. We got video of it. And behind us, all these people were saying, we missed the eclipse, we never saw anything. They were standing right there, they didn't even look. And there was. So, talking about crazy things that happen. It's called look, there's an eclipse going on. Look and see if it actually did happen. So, I love lunar eclipses as well as solar. Just making studies of the Earth's atmosphere versus, what happens on the moon is always a fun thing to do. But I will be honest with you, total solar eclipses are my thing. And last year I had the great pleasure of going with the Sky and Telescope group to Easter Island for the eclipse. And the weather was pretty good. I should have known it was going to be a good day when I took this photograph of one of the great statues with a rainbow over. But you can see in the morning, the weather was not really good. But I want you to think about this. Here's how I'm positioned. I'm positioned on the west end of the island. I have several of the Moai statues, our little eclipse group, and a group over watching the World Cup finals. Okay, so there's an eclipse going on. There is an eclipse going on, and these dudes are over watching the World Cup finals. Hello, there is a total solar eclipse. Hello, but no, they were watching, and they were rooting for the Netherlands too, who lost, but I won't get into that. So anyway, the eclipse itself was spectacular, and just that last seconds of the partial phase, you can see the the limb of the sun starting to break into beads due to the moon's edge. They want to go back and have me show you that again. Sometimes technology, you know how it is. A nice total. I mean, beautifully clear, except for third contact, which turned out to be kind of neat. But so we described this as the X in the sky, because the corona showed very low activity on the sun, but made more like an X, streamers, the whole bit.